Hello friends, welcome back to my channel. So today I'll be discussing about the blanket purchase order in SAP S4 HANA MM module. Now this is the second part of our series on the special procurement processes in SAP MM module. In our first video, we learnt about the consignment process. If you haven't seen that video, then I have kept the link of that video in the description section. You can go and visit the description section and click on the link to go through the consignment purchase order process. And today we'll be discussing about the blanket purchase order. So let's start. Now to understand what is a blanket purchase order, let's take a business scenario. Let's say that you have to purchase some stationery items for your office. Now the concept about these items are that these are very low value items and the cost of procurement process of these items may be higher than the cost of material itself. As we have seen in our procure to pay process video, that to procure any material in SAP MM, you have to go through a elaborate procure to pay process. Now this particular process involves manpower and a lot of cost is also incurred in this process to be done. Okay. Now because you are procuring very low value items such as stationery, so going through the whole process may not be beneficial on financial terms. Now for these material, there is also no need to create any material master because they are very generic materials and material master is not required every time to purchase these items. Then there will be no need to do goods receipt also for these items because you will not be keeping these items in your inventory. You will be just receiving them and consuming at the same time. Okay. So finally what you require is you want to create a purchase order and you directly want to process the invoice which has been received from the vendor. You will be notifying the vendor maybe through mail or some other communication method that they have to supply this much item. The rates and everything also vendor will directly post in its invoice. Okay, the rates and all the vendor will mention in the invoice and will just clear those invoice. So to keep a check on the value that you are going to post, you have something called as a limit in a blanket purchase order. When you will be creating a blanket purchase order, you will have two things there. One is the validity, that is up to which date you are going to process the invoice against that purchase order, and then another thing will be the limit, that is up to how much value you are going to pay the vendor against that purchase order. If you are going to exceed that value while processing the invoice, the system will post the invoice but will block the invoice for the payment. Okay, so this is the whole concept, that you are going to place a purchase order. You are not going to enter any net price or anything there. You are not going to enter any material code or any quantity there. Vendor will simply submit you an invoice and you will be clearing the invoice on regular basis up to the limiting value that you have entered in the purchase order and up to the date which you have given as a valid to date in the blanket purchase order. For creating a blanket purchase order, you will not be entering any material code. So in that case, you will have to enter a account assignment. Okay, so entering account assignment is mandatory for creating a blanket PO line item. And as I have told you that you will have to enter a validity date and a value limit. Up to this value limit, you will be able to process the invoice of the vendor. And if you go beyond this limit, then system will post the invoice but will block that invoice for payment purpose. And this validity date also, if you go beyond this date and process the invoice, then also system will block the invoice for payment. Okay, so this is all about the blanket purchase order. Now let's go to SAP and see how we can create a blanket purchase order and how we can process the invoice directly against that purchase order and create the vendor liability. Okay, so let's start. So now let's test the whole process in SAP. So we'll create PO through ME21N. And to create a blanket purchase order, we'll select the PO type as framework. You can see here framework order is available here. So you have to select framework order here. Then you have to enter purchase organization, purchase group and company code. Then you have to enter a supplier, press enter. Then you can see here as you have selected framework order, so validity start and end date becomes mandatory. Okay, so this is why this framework order selection is very important, because based on this selection only of the document type, you will get these fields available here. So let's enter some validity start and end date here. So let's give it 1 month time here. Then to create a blanket purchase order line item, you have to enter item category as B. Okay, you can take a drop down also here and see what does B mean. So you can see here B is for limit. Okay, so I'll select B here, and you have to enter some account assignment category. As I have told you, for blanket purchase order, material code is not required. Okay, you will be procuring materials where you are not going to put them in inventory. So you have to enter a account assignment mandatorily. So I'll enter account assignment K here, and then we'll enter some description of the material. So let's enter stationery items and then press enter. Now we have to enter the plant and the material group. Now you can see here that there is no need to enter any net price here, and system has automatically entered the PO quantity as 1 here. So you will not be entering any net price of the material, and you will not be entering any quantity for the material because GR is not to be done. You will be directly processing the invoice of the vendor against this PO line item. But what is required is you have to enter an overall limit and an expected value. This is the limit up to which you will be able to process the invoice without blocking the invoice. If you exceed this value, then the invoice will get blocked, and then you will have to release that invoice and then make the payment to the vendor. We'll be testing this. So let's enter some value here as overall limit. Now the expected value is the value up to which you are expecting the PO to be executed. If you are using release strategies in purchase order, then this is the value against which the release will be applicable. Okay. Let's say that you have configured your release strategy based on PO value, then the value that you enter in this field will be responsible for triggering that release procedure. So let's enter the same value here also. Then we have to enter the GL account and the cost center, and then click on OK. Now our PO is ready, so we'll save our PO. So you can see here the purchase order has been created. Let's copy. So now what we'll be doing is we have to directly process the invoice against this purchase order. So we'll go to T code Myro. We'll enter some reference number here, invoice date, and here we have to enter the purchase order. Then we'll press enter. Now you can see this line item has come here, but you can see here that no amount is appearing here. As we had seen that when we are creating the purchase order, we did not enter any line item amount. Okay, there was no net price. We only enter a limiting value. So to enter the value of the invoice in this screen, you have to click on this button here. You can see here the account assignment edit button is here. So you have to click on this button. First let us enter the baseline date, and then if we click on this button, you can see a new window will pop up here. Okay, in this new window you will have to enter the invoice amount which you have to process for the vendor. Okay, so here we'll be entering the amount that the vendor has claimed in its invoice and how much we want to pay. Okay, so let's enter some 100 rupees here. Everything other than that, the GL account and cost center will get copied from the purchase order. We'll click on check, and then we'll go back. Now in the basic data tab, we have to enter the amount that we want to process. So let's enter the same amount here. We'll click on calculate tax. So the net amount is 105 rupees. So we'll enter 105 here, and then let's simulate. Okay, so you can see here what amounts are getting posted. Your vendor liability is getting created for the amount that is to be paid. Then the consumption GL, you have a debit entry and a tax entry you have here. Okay, now let's see. Some messages have opened up. So you have to enter business place. So now let's enter the business place here, and then click on simulate, and then post this invoice. So you can see here the invoice has been posted. If you want to see this particular invoice document, then you can go to the purchase order. Let's go to the purchase order. And here you can see that the invoice document for 100 rupees has been posted. Now let's say that another invoice vendor has submitted and we have to post the second invoice. So let's post the second invoice. So again we'll go to Myro transaction. Then we'll enter the purchase order number. Again, we'll enter all these details. Now this time what we'll do is, since we have already posted invoice for 100 rupees and the limit value for the PO was 1000, so we'll try to post an amount more than 1000 rupees on cumulative basis. Okay. So again, we'll click on this button here, and this time if I enter 1000 here, so it will amount to 100 rupees we have already posted in our previous invoice, and 1000 we are posting this time. So the total cumulative amount becomes 1100, whereas the PO limiting value was 1000. So let's see what system does this time. So we'll click on check button. We'll go back, and you can see here system is giving me an information that I am exceeding the amount which is given in the PO as a limiting value, and because of this what will happen is the invoice will get blocked. Let's see that. So I'll just click on OK. Then we'll enter other details which we entered last time also. So I'll enter the business place, click on calculate tax, and then enter the amount here and click on simulate. You can see here 1050 is getting posted as credit amount against the vendor, so this liability will get created, 1000 in the consumption account as debit entry and 50 as tax. Okay, so we'll click on back button, and then we'll simulate and post. Now you see here the document was posted, but system gives you a message that it has been blocked for payment. Why this has happened? Because we have posted a cumulative amount more than what was there in your blanket purchase order. So this is how you post a blanket purchase order in Miro transaction, and if you exceed, then this is how system will block this for the payment. So this is all about the blanket purchase order. We have seen the whole cycle. We created a blanket purchase order by selecting the document type as framework order. Let me just again show you. So if I go to the PO here, so you can see here the framework order was selected and the item category B was selected. These two are very important entries. These two are the mandatory entries which are required for you to create a blanket purchase order, and then you have to enter an account assignment. If you go to the delivery tab here, you can see the goods receipt is not selected. So the goods receipt is not going to happen against this PO, and no net price you are going to enter in this particular purchase order. Whatever values you will enter in the Miro transaction directly, because that was the whole purpose of this particular business process, that you will be receiving invoices from the vendor on regular basis. Only thing that you have to see is you have to enter a limiting value here, that we enter 1000, and you can verify here also that we posted actual value, that is we posted invoice for 1100 rupees. Okay, so the second invoice that we posted, that has been blocked for payment. You can see here. Now let's open the second invoice document that we posted, that is for 1000 rupees. If I open this one, if I go to follow on documents, if I go to the accounting document, here you can see if I go to the line item, then you can see the payment block has been updated here. If you take a drop down, the payment block is that it has been blocked from the invoice verification transaction. How I can unblock this? I have to just click on change document, and I will remove this particular block here, and I will save. Now once I have saved this invoice is now released for payment, and when I execute the payment transactions, then I will be able to process the payment to the vendor. Okay, so this is all about blanket purchase order. I hope that you have understood this, and I hope that you have liked this video. If you like my videos, then please like and subscribe to my channel, and please share to your friends for getting maximum reach. Thanks for supporting me. Thanks a lot.